I'm Chris Bowen. I'm the CISO and founder of ClearDATA, and preserving and protecting patient data has been our mission since the day we started the company a long time ago. Well, we've had another one happen, another data breach, another payer data breach. So what happened? Some of the high points are that there was a third-party company called Conduit that had its network penetrated or compromised. And because of this, there was some movement inside the network and data was exfiltrated, taken away, if you will, and put up for auction or ransom rather in the dark web. So what do we do about this? I mean, certainly the folks at the payer environment are working to restore and become more resilient, but let's kind of focus on how you recover from something like this. I'll give you some recovery strategies, but honestly, I want to really talk about how to prepare for something like this in the first place. And it comes back down to just standard operating procedures. It comes down to hygiene. It comes down to blocking and tackling. The things that we do that are not sexy every day. When we go to work, we check the alerts, we check the telemetry that's happening in our systems. We take a look at our backups to see if they're still pristine, if they are air gapped, if they are isolated from production environments, test environments, QA staging environments, etc. And we do that every single day because it's a daily set of activities that you have to have in order to be successful in the resilience side of the equation. So what does all this mean? This means that you really have to do your diligence on third-party vendors. You'll hear people say, "Hey, why can't you do this faster? Why can't you go through and vet an organization a little faster so we can buy their services or whatever?" So vendor diligence is a big deal, and it's sometimes painful. And even with the best of diligence, sometimes these attacks get through. Uh, Testing your backups. We have to be testing our backups all the time. We have to do disaster recovery, data resilience exercises. We have to do breach simulations. We have to understand what needs to be done and when. All right. So what do you do in the case of a breach? Seriously, it's a very intrusive event. It's terrible. People have at that point lost their day jobs because now they're working on resiliency. They're working on restoring things. They're working on, heaven forbid, I hope, not working on negotiating ransomware demands. But hopefully the things that they've worked on are, number one, containing and eradicating the threat. And that's the first priority, is to prevent additional damage. Isolate the systems, revoke access, remove unauthorized persistent mechanisms, those kinds of things. Do your best to identify malware that's already in your environment. Next thing you got to do is you need to assess your scope and your impact. Organizations have to understand what the blast zone was, what the blast radius was. So that means you're going to have to look at some logs, some audit logs, CloudTrail logs, Defender logs, EDR telemetry, those kinds of things. You need to also really take a hard look at the data that was compromised, determine what populations there were, determine what states those folks were living in or reside in, and which systems are impacted. An EHR system isn't just one system. There's thousands of applications that help support and feed that system. So it's really a lot of work to do that. And of course, we have to think about notifying the required parties after you go through the process of identifying what is reportable, what is not. You certainly have to make sure that you have notification. Now, speaking of notification, crisis communications is a big deal during and after a breach. And so understanding who you need to talk to, when you need to talk to these folks, when are you going to talk to your board members? When are you going to talk to your employees? How about your media holding statements, social media, all these things you need to think about when you are talking about what's going on. And of course, you want to limit the number of folks who are in the inside of this to just those that are necessary to help address the issue. Certainly regulatory entities as well, you might have to make some notifications to. Restore. You got to restore your systems, and you have to make sure your data is safe. You need to make sure that you have known good backups to back up to which to back up. Sorry about the preposition at the end of that sentence. But we need to have backups and immutable storage. That means the storage doesn't change. And hardening standards, understanding how you can comply with high trust and NIST and zero trust principles as well. Finally, work on that security posture, strengthen it. Make sure that you have multi-factor authentication. Change Health had just one issue with a multi-factor issue, and it brought down almost an entire industry. Enforce your IAM. Make sure you have your logging in place, and then conduct your full risk assessment on a regular basis. And let's just hope it doesn't have to happen again. I said it in the beginning of this little video. I'm going to say it again. Our mission at ClearDATA is to protect patient data. That is our sole mission in life. The tools change along the journey, but the mission still stays the same. So let's all be safe out there.